Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Um, when we last left Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, he had been taken into the castle that he had prayed for on Christmas Eve. He'd had a great time, and then the king had offered him a trading game where the king's going to go out hunting, and whatever he finds and captures, he's going to give to Gawain. Gawain is going to laze around the castle all day, and whatever he gets, he's going to give to the king. Okay, now I need to warn you for this section. There is graphic descriptions of hunting and preparing animals after hunting. So skinning and gutting and things like that. I will, when we get to those sections, just sort of give you a little heads up, so if you need to skip them, you can. Okay? They're accurate descriptions. So if you're a hunter, you're going to go, oh yeah, that is what they do. But it is not necessary to understanding the story, so you can skip them if you need to. The other warning for this section is that there is some very reluctant romantic overtures made to Gawain, where he feels like he can't turn them down, but he also can't give in to them. And those things are going to show up a few times. So if that is sensitive for you, you can just sort of be aware that it's happening and then skip the detail. Okay? And these scenes are kind of going to go like this. They're going to juxtapose each other. All right? So I'll let you know when those things are going to happen. So here's what I want you to do. Have your PDF of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight open. Scroll down to page 35 and have your notes ready. You can either have your electronic notes, or if, like me, you're taking notebook notes. Okay? And your highlighter and a pen or pencil. Okay? Get all that stuff ready. And we're going to start with Fitt 3. Well before sunrise, the servants were stirring. The guests who were going had called for their grooms, and they scurried to the stables to ready the steeds, trussing and tying all the trammel and tack. The high-ranking nobles got ready to ride, jumped stylishly to their saddles and seized the reins, then cantered away on their chosen courses. The lord of that land was by no means last to be rigged out for riding with the rest of his men. Remember, he's heading for hunting. After Mass, he wolfed down a meal, then made for the hunting grounds with his hunting horn. Doo-doo-doo-doo. So, as morning was lifting its lamp to the land, his lordship and huntsmen were high on horseback, and the canny kennelmen had coupled the hounds, and opened the cages and called them out. On the bugles they blew 3 bellowing notes, to the din of baying and barking, and the dogs, which chased and wandered, were chastened by whip. As I heard it, we're talking 100 top hunters at least. The handlers hold their hounds, the huntsmen's hounds run free, each bugle blast rebounds between the trunks of trees. Okay, we're going to get into the hunting here. Just a little heads up. As the cry went up, the wild creatures quaked. The deer in the dale, quivering with dread, hurtled to high ground, but were headed off by the ring of beaters who bawled and roared. The stags of the herds, with their high-branched heads, and the broad-horned bucks were allowed to pass by, for the lord of the land had laid down a law that man should not maim the male in close season. But the hinds were halted with hollers and whoops, and the din drove the does to sprint for the dells. Then the eye can see that the air is all arrows. Isn't that a great bit of imagery? All across the forest they flashed and flickered, biting through hides with their broad heads. What? They bleat as they bleed, and they die on the banks. And always the hounds are hard on their heels, and the hunters on horseback come hammering behind, with stone-splinting cries, as if cliffs had collapsed. Okay, Imagine how much noise there is. And those animals which escaped the aim of the archers were steered from the slopes down to rivers and streams, and set upon and seized at the stations below. So perfect and practised were the men at their posts, and so great were the greyhounds which grappled with the deer, that prey was pounced on and dispatched with speed and force. The Lord's heart leaps with life. Now on, now off his horse, all day he hacks and drives, and dusk comes in due course. So through the lime-leaf border the Lord led the hunt, while snug in his sheets lay slumbering Gawain. Okay, so now we're switching back inside the castle. While all this hunting is happening all day, Gawain is still sleeping in his bed. And I said I would give you a warning when we were about to get to this uncomfortable bit. Here it is. Okay, ready? So Gawain's sleeping, dozing as the daylight dappled the walls, under a splendid cover enclosed by curtains. There's curtains around the bed because, castles are cold, there's no central heating, right? And so there's bed curtains. And you've probably seen these in like old Ebenezer Scrooge type movies. And so these curtains are here to keep him warm in bed. So there's like curtains around the bed. He's all snuggled up. There's daylight coming across the walls. Like when you sleep in, right? Especially when you've been working really, really hard and you have a day you can finally sleep in. Okay. And while snoozing, he heard a slyly made sound, the sound of a door swinging slowly aside. And from below the bedding he brings up his head and lifts a corner of the curtain a little, wondering warily what it might be. So he hears someone like really quietly creeping into his room. So he puts his head up, peeps through the curtain to see who's there. Now who do you think is here? It was she, the lady, looking her loveliest. Most quietly and craftily closing the door, nearing the bed. It is the lady of the manor, the one he's been having such a good time talking to, but here's a problem. Now she's in his bedroom. And she's a married lady. She should not be in his bedroom, should she? And he's a knight who keeps Mary, the Virgin Mary, on the inside of his shield, right? He's all about chastity and honor. He should not be in his bedroom with a married lady. The knight felt nervous. Lying back, he assumed the shape of sleep. How many of us have done that, right? Somebody comes in our room to wake us up or whatever, and we pretend we're still sleeping. As she stole towards him with silent steps, then clasped the curtain and crept inside, then sat down softly at the side of his bed and awaited him waking for a good long while. Okay, so not only does she come in his room, she opens the curtains around his bed and sits on his bed waiting for him to wake up. Gawain lay still in his state of false sleep, turning over in his mind what this matter might mean, and where this lady's unlikely visit might lead. Yet he said to himself, instead of this stealth, I should openly ask what her actions imply. So he stirred and stretched and turned on his side, lifted his eyelids, and, looking alarmed, signed himself hurriedly with his hand as if saving his life. So he's pretending to wake up and then oh my goodness, what are you doing here? Her chin is pale, her cheeks are ruddy red with health, her smile is sweet. She speaks with lips that love to laugh. Good morning, Sir Gawain, said the graceful lady. You sleep so soundly one might sidle in here. You're tricked and you're trapped. But let's make a truce, or I'll besiege you in your bed, and you'd better believe me. Oh, okay, she's basically coming on to him. That's not good. She giggled girlishly as she teased good Gawain. The man in the bed said, "Good morning, ma'am. I'll contentedly attend whatever task you set, and in serving your desires I shall seek your mercy, which seems my best plan in the circumstances." And he loaded his light-hearted words with laughter. "But, my gracious lady, if you grant me leave, will you pardon this prisoner and prompt him to rise? Then I'll quit these covers and pull on my clothes, and our words will flow more freely back and forth." So he's deliberately misunderstanding her. He's like, "Oh, well, I'll do whatever, whatever it is you need me to do, but can you leave the room and let me get dressed?" "Not so beautiful, sir," the sweet lady said. "Bide in your bed. My own plan is better. I'll tuck in your covers corner to corner, then playfully parley with the man I have pinned. Because I know your name, the knight Sir Gawain, famed through the realm whichever road he rides, whose princely honor is highly prized among lords and ladies and everyone alive. And right there you lie, and we are left all alone, with my husband and his huntsmen away in the hills, and the servants snoring, and my maids asleep, and the door to this bedroom barred with a bolt. I have in my house an honored guest, so I will take my time. I'll be talking to him for a while. You're free to have my all. Do with me what you will. I'll come just as you call and swear to serve you well." Okay, so what she's saying is, I know who you are. I know you're Sir Gawain, and everybody else is gone, and the door's locked, and everyone else is asleep, and my husband isn't here, and I've got you cornered. Okay, but Gawain is not into this at all, right? He's definitely not going to sleep with the Lord's wife. He's definitely not going to make her think he even wants to do that. But he also can't disrespect a lady, can he? So pause for a minute and go and look at your notes and look at the elements of chivalry. The one that says honor women, right? Let's put in maybe page 37 here, because he's got to honor women. And he's trapped, isn't he? He can't be rude to her and say, "Hey, get out of here." But he also can't sleep with her, right? Okay. Because, and why can't he sleep with her? Well, if you flip back, serve the liege lord, right? He has to respect the lord of this house. Okay, so he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. So here's his answer. Ready? "In good faith," said Gawain, "such gracious flattery, though in truth I'm not nearly such a noble knight. I don't dare to receive your respect you describe, and in no way warrant such worthy words, but by God I'd be glad if you'd give me the right to serve your desires, and with action and speech bring you perfect pleasure. The honor would be priceless." Said the gracious lady, "Sir Gawain, in good faith, how improper on my part if I were to imply any slur or slight on your status as a knight. But what lady in this land wouldn't latch the door wouldn't rather hold you as I do here, in the company of your clever conversation, forgetting all grief and engaging in joy, then hug to her heart a hoard of gold? I praise the Lord who upholds the high heavens, for I have what I hoped for above all else by his grace." That lovely-looking maid, she charmed him and she chased, but every move she made he countered case by case. Okay, so she's like, "Look, I wouldn't ever want to say anything bad about you as a knight, and what lady wouldn't want to be in this situation, and what lady wouldn't, brother?" She's basically saying, look, if you don't take this opportunity, then you're not really a knight, because I know about knights. Okay, are you noticing a parallel here? Because the king is outside, right, hunting animals, the queen, well, he's not really a king, but the lord, and the lady is inside hunting Gawain. So there's a real parallelism going on here. "Madam," said our man, "may Mary bless you, and in good faith you are kind and the fairest of the fair. Some fellows are praised for the feats they perform. I hardly deserve to receive such respect, whereas you are genuinely joyful and generous." "By Mary," she declared, "it's quite the contrary. Were I the wealthiest woman in the world, with priceless pearls in the palm of my hand to bargain with and buy the best of all men, then for all the signs you have shown me, sir, of kindness and courtesy and exquisite looks, a picture of perfection, now proved to be true, no person on the planet would have be picked before you." "In fairness," said Gawain, "you found far better, but I'm proud of the price you would pay," sorry, gotta go back up to the next page, "from your purse, and will swear to serve you as my sovereign forever. Let Christ now know that Gawain is your knight." Okay, so about like being the knight of a lady, right? Serving the lady. How about looking at your romance elements of chivalry, because that's definitely chivalry he's showing here, right? And honoring women. And you know what? Even refraining from giving offense, because he's really, really trying hard here to be polite and kind, and because he likes her, but he also can't say no to her, but he can't say yes to her, so they have kind of this back and forth. Okay? All right. "Then they muse on many things through morning and midday, and the lady stares with loving look. But Gawain is a gentleman and remains on guard, and although no woman could be warmer or more winning, he is cool in his conduct on account of the scene he foresees. The strike he must receive, as cruel fate decrees. The lady begs her leave. At once Gawain agrees." So he is not giving in to her for two reasons. One, it's not acceptable to sleep with someone else's wife, although, courtly romance, he can like her, he can love her, maybe even sleep with her, but he couldn't ever have her. But the second thing, he keeps thinking about the fact that he's going to be killed. He's going to go have his head cut off, and he's got to keep his soul clean because he's going to die. So he's being extraordinarily careful here. Okay. She glanced at him, so she's asked him, like, they talk all morning, they talk all, until lunchtime, and he's in his bed still, in his pajamas, with, like, the sheet up to his chin, and she's sitting on the side of his bed. So she's like, "Oh, I have to go," and he's like, "Oh, of course." She glanced at him and laughed and gave her goodbye, and then stood and stunned him with astounding words. "May the Lord repay you for your prize performance, but I know that Gawain could never be your name." "But why not?" asked the knight, in need of an answer, afraid that some fault in his manner had failed him. The beautiful woman blessed him, then rebuked him. A good man like Gawain, so well regarded, the embodiment of courtliness to the bones of his being, would never have lingered so long with a lady without craving a kiss, as politeness requires, or coaxing a kiss with his closing words. So she's like, "You don't want to kiss me, you must not be Gawain, because a knight, the real Gawain, would want to kiss me." And of course he can't be not Gawain. "Very well," said Gawain, "let's do as you wish. If a kiss is your request, I shall keep my promise faithfully to fulfill you, so ask no further," because of course he said he'd do whatever she asked. He's got to learn not to say that. The lady comes close, cradles him in her arms, leans nearer and nearer, then kisses the knight. Then they courteously commend one another to Christ, and without one more word, the woman is away. He leaps from where he lies at the heck of a lick, calls for his chamberlain, chooses his clothes, and makes himself ready, then marches off to mass. Then he went to a meal, which was made and waiting, and was merry and amused till the moon had slivered the view. No man felt more at home, tucked in between those two, the cute one and the crone. Their gladness grew and grew. So he jumps up, he gets dressed, he goes to mass, he has food, and then he just sits and chats all day with this lovely lady and the older lady. Well, why was he feeling all awkward before and now he's fine and happy? Well, 'cause he's up and he's dressed and he's in the company of other people in public with a chaperone. So nothing bad can really happen, so he can enjoy the lady's company and enjoy a good chat. Okay, but remember, he's got to give the Lord whatever he got during the day, right? And what did he get? And the lord of the land still led the hunt. Okay, so we're going to get into some more hunting details here, just a heads up. Driving hinds to their deaths through holts and heaths, and by the setting of the sun had slaughtered so many of the does and other deer that it beggared belief. Then finally the folk came flocking to one spot, and quickly they collected and counted the kill. Then the leading lords and their left-handed men chose the finest deer, those fullest with fat, and ordered them cut open by those skilled in the art. They assessed and sized every slain creature, and even on the feeblest found 2 fingers worth of fat. Through the sliced open throat they seized to the stomach, and the butchered innards were bound in a bundle. Next they lopped off the legs and peeled back the pelt and hooked out the bowels through the broken belly, but carefully, being cautious not to cleave the knot. Okay, without getting into too many gross details, you have to butcher the animals pretty immediately or the meat goes bad, and you want to take out the innards, which nobody's going to eat, right? But if they break when you're taking them out, then all the stuff in the animal's digestive system gets on the meat of the animal and, well, basically contaminates it. So they're very careful when they're doing that. Then they clasped the throat, and clinically they cut the gullet from the windpipe, then garbaged the guts. Then the shoulder blades were severed with sharp knives and slitted through a slit so the hide stayed whole. Then the beasts were prized apart at the breasts, and they went to work on the garroching again, riveting open the front as far as the hind fork, fetching out the offal. Then, with further purpose, filleting the ribs in the recognized fashion, and the spine was subject to a similar process, being pared to the haunch so it held as one piece, then hoisting it high and hacking it off. Its name is the numbles, as far as I know, and just that. Its hind legs pulled apart, they slit the fleshy flaps, then cleave and quickly start to break it down its back. Okay, these are really grisly details, right? About taking apart these animals. And they're fairly accurate. You guys who hunt could, especially if you hunt deer, you could verify the accuracy of this kind of detail. And they were butchering animals in the same way, you know, back in the Middle Ages. But why is this included? Like, okay, it's fine, it's here, but why are we getting this level of detail about this in a poem that's ostensibly, you know, a romance? Well, remember how flowery our description, how sort of fancy but also still the indoor scenes have been, right? It's like the guy stuck in the bed and the girl sitting next to him, or the guy sitting on a couch and the old lady and the young lady are on both sides of him, right? And they're talking and they're still and they're indoors, versus this action, this really detailed description, all these outdoor, like almost violent, you know, very specific bodily details. And we get this real contrast. Also, you could go in your notes, and under romance, this still counts as vivid description. So you could put your page numbers in here. Okay, we're going to go into some more description here. All right. Then the heads and necks of hinds were hewn off, and the choice meat of the flanks chopped away from the chine, and a fee for the crows was cast into the copse. So the fee for the crows is meat that the crows can eat, so basically meat that they don't want. Then each side was skewered, stabbed through the ribs, and heaved up high, hung by its hocks, and every person was paid with appropriate portions. Using pelts for plates, the dogs pogged out on liver and lights and stomach lining and a blended sop of blood and bread. The kill horn was blown, and the bloodhounds bayed. Then, hauling their meat, they headed for home, sounding howling wails on their hunting horns. As daylight died, they covered the distance and were back in the abode where Gawain sat biding his time. Warm friends and warm flames will meet the huntsman's home return. Gawain as well will greet his host. Bright hearth fires burn. So if you've ever been out hunting and then you bring home your kill and you've been out in the cold and you've been sweating and you've been working and it's just really nice to be home and warm, right? Okay, so we're going to get away from the animal detail into the interior of the house again, okay? Then the whole of the household was ordered to the hall, and the women as well as their maids in waiting. And once assembled, he instructs the servants that the venison be revealed in full view, and in excellent humor he asks that Gawain should see for himself the size of the kill, and showed him the side slab sliced from the ribs. "Are you pleased with this pile? Have I won your praise? Does my skill at this sport deserve your esteem?" Okay, and he's kind of joking, but basically the Lord has called in everybody to come see all this meat that he's killed, and he and his people, and it's heaped up on the table. Okay, now why is that important? Because remember, he vowed to give Gawain whatever he got. "Why, yes," said the other. "It's the hugest haul I've seen out of season for several years." "And I give it all to you, Gawain," said the master, "for, according to our contract, it is yours to claim." "Just so," said Gawain, "and I'll say the same, for whatever I've won within these walls, such gains will be graciously given to you." Oh, wait, what did Gawain get? So he held out his arms and hugged the Lord and kissed him in the kindliest way he could. "You're welcome to my winnings, to my one profit, though I'd gladly have given you any greater prize." "I'm grateful," said the Lord, "and Gawain, this gift would carry more worth if you cared to confess by what wit you won it, and when, and where." He's like, the kiss would be better if I knew how you got it, and who gave it to you, and where they gave it to you. But Gawain can't tell him, "Hey, your wife kissed me," right? So Gawain's got to be kind of like slick here. "That wasn't our pact," he replied, "so don't pry. You'll be given nothing greater. The agreement we have holds good." They laugh aloud and trade wise words which match their mood. When supper's meal is made, they dine on dainty food. Okay, so let's pause for a minute. Let's look at the elements of chivalry. Refrain from giving offense, definitely, right? So page 41 there. But also to keep the faith, or to keep your promises, right? Because he promised he would give, and so he did. He had to. Okay. Later, they lounged by the Lord's fire and were served unstintingly with subtle wines, and agreed to the game again next morning, and to play by the rules already in place, any takings to be traded between the two men at night when they met, no matter what the merchandise. Okay, so they're agreeing on this same deal again tomorrow. They concurred on this contract in front of the court, and drank on the deal, and went on drinking till late, when they took their leave at last. And every person present disappeared to bed. By the third cackle of the crowing cock, the Lord and his liegemen were leaping from their beds, and mass and morning meal were taken, and the riders were rigged out ready to run as day dawns. They leave the levels loud with howling hunting horns. The huntsmen loose the hounds through thickets and through thorns. Okay, so it's the next morning. They're up early, even though they were up late partying last night. They're back up early. They're back out hunting. Okay, and we're going to get more hunting detail here. Just a heads up. Soon they picked up a scent at the side of a swamp, and the hunters which first found it were urged ahead by a wild-voiced hunter and his wailing words. The pack responded with vigor and pace, alert to the trail. 40 lurchers at least. Then such a raucous din rose up all around them it ricocheted and rang from the rocky slopes. The hounds were mushed with hollers and the horn. Then suddenly they swerved and swarmed together in a wood, between a pool and a precipice. So between water and the edge of like a cliff. So whatever animal's up there is kind of stuck. On a mound near a cliff, on the margins of a marsh, where toppled stones were scattered and strewn, they coursed towards their quarry, with huntsmen close at heel. Then a crew of them ringed the hillock and the cliff until they were certain that inside their circle was the beast whose being the bloodhounds had sensed. I wonder what they found. Then they riled the creature with their rowdy ruckus, and suddenly he breaks the barrier of beaters. The biggest wild boar has bolted from his cover. Now, some of you guys are boar hunters, right? And boars are wild hogs. And so this is a big one, and they can be very, very dangerous. Ancient in years and estranged from the herd, savage and strong, a most massive swine with a fearsome grunt. And the group was disgruntled, for 3 were thrown down by the first of his thrusts. So they're mad because 3, when he's thrusting at their horses, 3 people get tossed off their horses, as he fled away fast before inflicting any further damage. The other huntsmen bawled "Hi!" and "Hey, hey!" blasted on their bugles, blew to regroup, so the dogs and the men made a merry din, tracking him noisily, testing him time and time again. The boar would stand at bay and aim to maul and maim the thronging dogs, and they would yelp and yowl in pain. Poor doggies! The front men stepped forward to fire a shot, aimed arrows at him, which were often on target. But their points could not pierce his impenetrable shoulders, so his skin is so thick. Now, remember, this is before guns. So they're shooting arrows at him, and they're basically bouncing off him. Oh, okay, definitely bouncing. Bounced away from his bristly brow. The smooth, slender shafts splintered into pieces, and the heads glanced away from wherever they hit. Battered and baited by such bombardment, in frenzied fury he flies at the men, hurts them horribly as he herders past, so that many grow timid and retreated a tad. But the master of the manor gave chase on his mount, the boldest of beast hunters, his bugle blaring, trumpeting the tally-ho, and tearing through thickets, till the setting sun slipped from the western sky. So the day was spent in pursuit of this style, while our lovable young lord had not left his bed, and cosseted in costly quilted covers, there he remained. Okay, we're making the transition back inside, and again, we're seeing this big contrast, right? So here's the, my bangs are too long, they're in my eyes. Here's the lord of the manor, out there, they're chasing this big boar all day, and nothing's happening, right? Meanwhile, indoors, the lady at first light did not neglect Gawain, but went to wake the knight, and meant to change his mind. So she's hunting him again, and he's all tucked up in his bed and hasn't left there all day. She approaches the curtains, parts them, and peeps in, at which Sir Gawain makes her welcome at once, so he kind of knew she was going to show up again, and maybe he enjoys it. But we're, again, just like they couldn't quite catch the boar and everything's bouncing off him and they're not achieving it, let's see the parallel here. Okay. And with prompt speech she replies to the prince, settling by his side and giggling sweetly, looking at him lovingly before launching her words. If this is Gawain who greets me, I am galled that a man so dedicated to doing his duty cannot heed the first rule of honorable behavior, which has entered through one ear and exited the other. You've already lost what yesterday you learned in the truest lesson my tongue could teach." "What lesson?" asked the knight. "I know of none, though if discourtesy has occurred, then correct me, of course." "I encouraged you to kiss," the lady said kindly, "and to claim one quickly when one is required, an act which ennobles any knight worthy of the name." Okay, so she's like, "Well, knights should want to kiss ladies, and I taught you that yesterday, but here I am showing up again, and you haven't asked me to kiss you." "I encouraged you." "Oh, sorry. Dear lady," said the other, "don't think such a thing. I dare not kiss in case I am declined. If refused, I'd be at fault for offering in the first place." So he's like, "I'm not going to offer to kiss you because if you turn me down, then I shouldn't have asked in the first place." Right? "In truth," she told them, "you cannot be turned down. If someone were so snooty as to snub your advance, a man like you has the means of his muscles." She's like, "Oh, well, if someone turned you down, you could always force them." "Yes, by God," said Gawain, "what you say holds good, but such heavy-handedness is frowned on in my homeland." So he's like, remember, we saw that, right, in the Lady of Bath story, right? You're not supposed to force women. "And so is any gift not given with grace. What kiss you request I will courteously supply. Have what you want or hold off, whichever is the case." So he's like, if you want me to kiss you, I will, but you have to ask me first. I'm not going to force anything. So, bending from above, the fair one kissed his face. The two then talk of love, its grief, also its grace. "I would like to learn," said the noble lady, "and please find no offence, but how can it follow that a lord so lively and young in years, a champion in chivalry across the country, and in chivalry the chiefmost aspect to choose, as all knights acknowledge, is loyalty and love? For when tales of truthful knights are told, in both title and text, the topic they describe is how lords have laid down their lives for love, endured for many days love's dreadful ordeal, then vented their feelings with an avenging valor by bringing great bliss to a lady's bedroom. And you, the most noble of all noble knights, whose fame goes before him, yes, how can it follow that twice I have taken this seat by your side, yet you have not spoken the smallest syllable which belongs to love or anything like it?" So she's read all these courtly romances, right? Remember the video you watched last week about courtly romance, right? She's read all of these, and she's like, "I know how knights are supposed to behave. They're supposed to talk to ladies of their love and pine away and then, ravish the ladies, and I've sat here twice and you haven't said anything about love to me. Well, you must not be a knight, really." Okay, so let's pause here and let's look at chivalry in romance, because that's what she's saying chivalry is, right? Chivalry is courtly love. So it's page 43, 44. Okay. "A knight so courteous and considerate in his service really ought to be eager to offer this pupil some lessons in love, and to lead by example. Is he actually ignorant, this man of eminence? Or does he deem me too dunce-like to hear of dalliances? I come to learn of love, and more a lady all alone. Perform for me before my husband heads for home." Okay, she's really laying it on thick. And Gawain, again, can't say yes and can't say no, can't offend the lady, also can't disrespect the lord by sleeping with his wife, right? "In faith," said Gawain, "may God grant you fortune. It gives me great gladness, and seems a good game that a woman so worthy should want to come here and be happy and good-hearted with a humble knight, unfit for her favours. I am flattered indeed. But to take on the task of explaining true love, or touch on the topics those love tales tell of, with yourself, who I sense has more insight and skill in the art than I have, or even 100 of the likes of me, however long we live, would be somewhat presumptuous, I have to say. So he's like, you know way more about love than me or even 100 people like me. I wouldn't even try to teach you about love. But to the best of my ability, I'll do your bidding, bound as I am to honor you forever and to serve you as long as our Savior preserves me. So the lady tempted and teased him, trying to enmesh him in whatever mischief she had in mind. But fairly and without fault he defended himself. No evil in either of them, only ecstasy that day. At length, when they had laughed, the woman kissed Gawain. Politely then she left, and went on her own sweet way. So he got 2 kisses today, one when she arrived and one when she left. Roused and risen, he was ready for mass. The meal of the morning was made and served. Then he loitered with the ladies the length of the day, while the lord of the land ranged left and right in pursuit of that pig which stampeded through the uplands, breaking his best hounds with its back-snapping bite when it stood embattled. Then bowmen would strike, goading it to gallop into open ground, where the air was alive with huntsmen's arrows. That boar made the best man flinch and bolt. Okay, so we've had this contrast again between the quiet and the stillness of the interior and the excitement and the action of the exterior. But in both cases, it's a parry, right? One trying to catch the other. Okay, and we're going to get into some more specific hunting detail here. Fair warning. That boar made the best men flinch and bolt, till at last his legs were like lead beneath him, and he hobbled away to hunker in a hole, by a stony rise at the side of a stream. With the bank at his back, he scrapes and burrows, frothing and foaming foully at the mouth, wetting his white tusks. The hunters waited, irked by the effort of aiming from afar, but daunted by the danger of daring to venture too near. So many men before had fallen prey, they feared that fierce and frenzied boar whose tusks could slash and tear. Till his lordship hacks up, urging on his horse, spots the swine at standstill encircled by men, and then handsomely dismounts and unhands his horse, brandishes a bright sword, and goes bounding onwards, wading through the water to where the beast waits. Aware that the man was wafting a weapon, the hog hairs stood on end, and its howling grunt made the fellows there fear for their master's fate. Then the boar burst forward, bounded at the lord. So the beast and the hunter both went bundling into white water, and the swine came off worst, because the moment they clashed, the man found his mark, knifing the boar's neck, nailing his prey, hammering it to the hilt, bursting the hog's heart. Screaming, it was swept downstream, almost slipping beneath. At least 100 hounds latch on with tearing teeth, then dragged to drier ground. The dogs complete its death. Ooh, that's grim. That's grim. The kill was blown on many blaring bugle, and the unhurt hunters hollered and whooped. The chief amongst them, in charge of the chase, commanded the bloodhounds to bay at the boar. Then one who was wise in woodland ways began to carefully cut up and carve up the carcass. Okay, and we're going to get into butchering details here. So if you need to skip ahead a little bit, that's okay. First he hacks off his head and holds it aloft, then roughly rivets it right along the spine. He gouges out the guts and grills them over coals, and blended with bread they are tidbits for the bloodhounds. Next he fetches out the fillets of glimmering flesh and retrieves the intestines in time-honored style. Then the two sides are stitched together, intact and proudly displayed on a strong pole. You've seen that in like movies and things, right, where they have the pig and the pole through it so they can carry it home. So with the swine swinging they swagger home, bearing the boar's head before that huntsman who had fought with his fists in the ford till the beast was slain. The day then dragged, it seemed, before he found Gawain, who comes when called, most keen to countenance the claim. So they finally come home. He calls for Gawain. Gawain shows up because he's eager to see what the Lord caught. Now the Lord is loud with words and laughter and speaks excitedly when he sees Gawain. He calls for the ladies, plus the company of the court, just like before, right? You see repetition here. And he shows off the meat slabs and shares the story of the hog's hulking hugeness and the full horror of the fight to the finish as it fled through the forest. And Gawain is quick to compliment the conquest, praising it as proof of the Lord's prowess, for such prime pieces of perfect pork and such sides of swine were a sight to be seen. Then, admiringly, he handles the hog's giant head, feigning fear to flatter the master's feelings. "Now, Gawain," said the Lord, "I give you this game as our wager warranted, as well you remember." "Certainly," said Sir Gawain, "it shall be so, and graciously I shall give you my gains in exchange." He catches him by the neck and courteously kisses him, and then a second time kisses him in a similar style. "Now we're even," says Gawain. "At this evening's end the clauses of our contract have been kept, and you have what I owe." "By St. Giles," the just lord says, "this knight's the best I know. By wagering this way his gains will grow and grow." So he's like, when you keep wagering this way, you're getting way more than I'm getting. Then the trestle tables were swiftly assembled in casts with fine cloths, and a clear living light from the waxen torches awakened the walls. Places were set, and supper was served, and a din arose as they revelled in a ring around the fire in the fireplace, and the feasting party sang song after song, at supper and beyond, both traditional ditties and carols of the day, with as much amusement as a mouth could mention. The young woman and Gawain sat together all the while, and so lovingly was that lady towards that young lord, with stolen glances and secret smiles, that it muddled his mind and sent him half mad. But to snub a noblewoman was not in his nature, and though tongues might wag, he returned her attention all night. Before his friends retire, his lordship leads the knight, heads for his hearth and fire to linger by its light. So the lord has sort of led Gawain off so they could go talk by themselves. They supped and swapped stories and spoke again of the night to come next, which was New Year's Eve. Gawain pleaded politely to depart by morning, so in 2 days' time he might honor his treaty. But the lord was unswerving, insisting that he stayed. "As an honest soul, I swear in my heart you shall find the Green Chapel to finalize your affairs long before dawn on New Year's Day. So lie in your room, laze at your leisure, while I ride my estate, and as our terms dictate, we'll trade our trophies when the hunt returns." So the Lord wants to do this a third day in a row. And he's like, it's fine, you don't need to leave early. "I've tested you twice and found you truthful, but think tomorrow third time throw best." Now a lord can feel low whenever he likes, so let's chase cheerfulness while we have a chance. So these gentlemen agreed that Gawain would stay, and they took more drink, and then by torchlight retired to their beds. Our man then sleeps, a most reposed and peaceful rest. As hunters must, his host is up at dawn and dressed. Okay, so one more time. And just like a fairy tale, right, we have things come in threes. And the nice thing about threes, right, is that's comedic, it's tragic. The first two are the setup, the third one is the payoff. So let's pause for a minute and let's go to your notes and highlight refraining from giving offense, maybe serving the liege lord, put some page numbers where you see those. Okay. And definitely finishing what you start, speaking the truth, honoring women. Okay, chivalry and courtly love, right? I forgot about courtly love. We definitely want to mark that one. Okay, so now this is the third day. The Lord is up and ready for hunting again. After Mass, The master grabs a meal with his men and asks for his mount on that marvelous morning. All the grooms engaged to go with their lord were high on their horses before the hall gates. The fields were dazzling, fixed with frost, and the crown of sunrise rose scarlet and crimson, scalding and scattering clouds from the sky. This is a gorgeous description, isn't it? Maybe pause and put the page number, this is 47, with vivid descriptions. At the fringe of the forest, the dogs were set free, and the rumpus of the horns went ringing through the rocks. They fall on the scent of a fox, and follow, turning and twisting as they sniff out the trail. Okay, we're going to get, obviously, hunting details here, and now they're fox hunting this time. A young harrier yowls, and a huntsman yells. Then the pack come rushing to pick up the reek, running as a rabble along the right track. The fox scurries ahead. They scamper behind, pursue him at speed when he comes within sight, haranguing him with horrific, ranting howls. Now and then he doubles back through thorny thickets, or halts and hearkens at the hem of a hedge, until, finally by a hollow, he hurdles a fence, and carefully he creeps at the edge of a copse. A copse is a small group of trees, convinced that his cunning has outcannied those canines. But unawares he wanders where they lie in wait, where greyhounds are gathered together, a group of 3. He springs back with a start, then twists and turns and flees. With heavy, heaving heart, he tracks towards the trees. Such earthy elation hearing those hounds as they massed to meet him, marauding together, and they bayed bloodily at the sight of his being, as if clustering cliffs had crashed to the ground. Here he was ambushed by bushwhacking huntsmen, awaiting with a welcome of wounding words. There he was threatened and branded a thief, and always the hounds allowed him no ease. Okay, they're hunting foxes, which becomes very traditional later on, but they hunt foxes because foxes kill chickens, and foxes kill other farm animals, so they didn't want the foxes near the land, so they hunted foxes. Now people just hunt them for sport, and in England it's illegal, actually, right now. Often in the open the pack tried to pounce. Then the crafty renard is French for fox, would creep into cover. So his lordship and his lords were merrily led in this manner through the mountains until mid-afternoon, when our handsome hero snoozed contentedly at home, kept from the cold of the morning by curtains. Okay, so now we're going to switch from the action of outside to the quiet and the stillness again in his bedchamber. And again, he's not alone. But love would not let her ladyship sleep, and the fervor she felt in her heart would not fade. She rose from her rest and rushed to his room, in a flowing robe that reached to the floor and was finished inside with fine trimmed furs. Her head went unhooded, but heavenly gems were entwined in her tresses in clusters of 20, so she's actually got gems woven into her hair. She wore nothing on her face. Her neck was naked, and her shoulders were bare to both back and breast. Yeah, she's in a, for the time, like it's long and flowing, but there's hardly anything up here. And she's got her jewelry on, and she doesn't have anything on her head, so she's being quite immodest, really. She comes to his quarters and closes the door, makes her way to the window and throws it open, and then sweet and swift is the speech she intends for his ear. "Oh, sir, how can you sleep when the morning comes so clear?" And though his dreams are deep, he cannot help but hear. Yes, he dozes in a daze, dreams and mutters like a mournful man with his mind on dark matters, how destiny might deal him a death blow on the day when he grapples with the giant in the green chapel, how the strike of the axe must be suffered without struggle. So he's kind of having a nightmare here about what he's going to face the next morning. But sensing her presence there, he surfaces from sleep, drags himself out of his dreams to address her. Laughing warmly, she walks towards him and finds his face with the friendliest kiss. And in a worthy style he welcomes the woman, and seeing her so lovely and alluringly dressed, every feature so faultless, her complexion so fine, a passionate heat takes hold in his heart. Speech tripped from their tongues, and they traded smiles, and a bond of friendship was forged there, all blissful and bright. They talk of tenderness and pride, and yet their plight is perilous unless sweet Mary minds her knight. So this lady might really goad him into doing something he definitely ought not to do unless, Mary looks out for him. For that noble princess pushed him and pressed him, nudged him even nearer the limit where he needed to allow her love or impolitely reject it. Like, she's really pushing him to where either he's gonna have to sleep with her or he's gonna have to just straight up tell her no. He was careful to be courteous and avoid uncouthness, cautious that his conduct might be classed as sinful and counted as betrayal by the keeper of the castle. I shall not succumb, he swore to himself. All right, let's pause and let's look at our notes here, right? Serve the liege lord. We could put this page on that. But also refrain from giving offense. With affectionate laugh he fenced and deflected all the loving phrases that leapt from her lips. You shall bear the blame, said the beautiful one, if you feel no love for the female you lie with, and wound her more than anyone on earth to the heart. Unless, of course, there's a lady in your life to whom you are tied, and so tightly attached that you could not begin to break the bond. So in honesty and trust now, tell me the truth, for the sake of all love. Don't be secretive or speak with guile. She's like, well, is there another girl that's why you won't sleep with me? Because you have a lady at home. You judge wrong by St. John, he said to her, and smiled. There is no other one, and won't be for a while. These words, said the woman, are the worst insult. But I asked and you answered, and now I ache. She's like, well, if there isn't someone else, then why won't you? Kiss me warmly, and then I'll walk in the world in mourning like a lady who loved too much. Stooping and sighing, she kisses him sweetly, then withdraws from his side, saying as she stands, But before we part, will you find me some small favor? Will you give me some gift, a glove at least, that might leaven my loss when we meet in my memory? Okay, so she wants something to remember him by, right? Okay, so that's a very courtly romance idea, isn't it? So let's take a look. Let's put this page 50 under courtly love. I know this is going. We're almost done. Okay. Well, it were, said Gawain. I wish I had my most priceless possession as a present for your sweetness, for over and over you deserve and are owed the highest prize I could hope to offer, but I would not wish on you a worthless token, and it strikes me as unseemly you should receive nothing greater than a glove as a keepsake from Gawain. I'm here on an errand, in an unknown land, without men bearing bags of beautiful gifts, which I greatly regret through my regard for you. So I don't want to give you something as cheap as a glove, and I'd give you something really fancy. I'd give you the best thing I have, but I didn't bring anything with me. But man must live by his means, and neither mope nor moan. The pretty one replies, Nay, noble knight, you mean you'll pass to me no prize? No matter, here is mine. She offers him a ring of rich red gold, and the stunning stone set upon it stood proud, beaming and burning as the brightness of the sun. What wealth it was worth you will well imagine. But he would not accept it, and said straightway, By God, no tokens will I take at this time. I have nothing to give, so nothing will I gain. So he doesn't want to take anything from her because he has nothing to give to her, which makes sense. And also, if she gives him something, he's got to give it back to the Lord, and then the Lord's going to know where he got it, right? Especially if it's like the ring that his wife wears. She insists he receives it, but still he resists and swears on his name as a knight to say no. This is the first time he's outwardly said no to her. Snubbed by his decision, she said to him then, "You refuse my ring because you find it too fine, and don't dare to be deeply indebted to me, so I'll give you my girdle, a lesser thing to gain." From around her body she unbuckled the belt, which tightened the tunic beneath her topcoat, a green silk girdle trimmed with gold, exquisitely edged and hemmed by hand. So she's handing him her belt, this silk belt that's green, edged with gold. Those colors should be setting off little alarm bells in your head, right? Because what else was green and gold? And she sweetly beseeched Sir Gawain to receive it, in spite of its slightness, and hoped he would accept. But still he maintained he intended to take neither gold nor girdle, until by God's grace the challenge he had chosen was finally achieved. "With apologies, I pray you are not displeased, but I must firmly refuse you, no matter how flattered I am. For all your grace I owe 1,000 thank yous, ma'am. I shall through sun and snow remain your loyal man." So he's going to remain loyal to this lady, but he doesn't want to take anything from her. "And now he sends me back my silk," the lady responded, "so simple in itself, or so it seems, so little and unlikely, worth nothing or less. But the knight who knew of the power knitted in it would pay a high price to possess it, probably. For the body which is bound within this green belt, as long as it's buckled robustly about him, would be safe against those who seek to strike him, and all the slyness on earth wouldn't see him slain." Cheeky minx. She says, "Oh yeah, well the belt, doesn't look like it's worth anything, but if a person is wearing it, they can't be killed." And Gawain is going to, tomorrow morning, go get his head chopped off, right? And all that armor he was wearing before wasn't going to do him any good. But this might. The man mulled it over, and it entered his mind that this girdle, being given, might just the job to save him from the strike in his challenge at the chapel. With luck, it might let him escape with his life. So, relenting at last, he let her speak, and promptly she pressed him to take the present, and he granted her wish, gave in with good grace, though the woman begged him not to whisper a word of this gift to her husband, and Gawain agreed. Those words of theirs within those walls should stay. His thanks are heartfelt then. No sooner can he say how much it matters when 3 kisses come his way. Okay, so he's been kissed 3 times that day, possibly even 4, and he's taken the girdle. But he promises not to tell the Lord about the girdle. Now this breaks his previous promise, doesn't it? So this is a fracture in chivalry. So I think that's really important. So let's flip to where you said to keep the faith in your notes, and let's write down breaks his promise on page 51. Because this is a big deal. Like, yeah, he's taking it because it might save his life later, but he's also breaking his promise. Then the lady departed, leaving him alone, for the man had amused her as much as he could. And once she is quit, he clothes himself quickly, rises and dresses in the richest of robes, stowing the lovelace safely aside, hiding it away from all hands and eyes. So he's hiding that green belt, that green girdle. He's not putting it on and wearing it out, and he's not going to be honest about it. He knows he's doing something sneaky. Then he went at once to the chapel of worship, privately approached the priest, and implored him to allow his confession, and to lead him in life so his soul might be saved when he goes to his grave. Then fully and frankly he speaks of his sins, no matter how small, always seeking mercy, calling on that counselor to clear his conscience. The priest declares him so clean and so pure that the day of doom might dawn in the morning. Okay, so he goes to the priest and he confesses his sins, and he asks for forgiveness so that if he dies in the morning, then he'll go straight to heaven, right? Now, unlike the thing with the pardoner here, in the previous stories that we've read, Gawain definitely means this. Like, he really is trying to confess. We don't know whether he confesses about the belt or not, because we're not told. Then, in merrier mood, he mingled with the ladies, caroling and carousing and carrying on as never before, until nightfall. Folk feel and hear and see his boundless bliss, and say, "Such charm and cheer! He's at his happiest since his arrival here." And long let him loiter there, looked after by love. Now the lord of the land was still leading his men. Okay, so we're going back into the fox hunting here. Finishing off the fox he had followed for so long, he vaults a fence to flush out the victim. Hearing the hounds are harrying hard, then Reynard scoots from a section of scrub, and the rabble of the pack push right at his heels. Aware of its presence, the wary lord waits, then bares his bright sword and swishes at the beast, which shirks from its sharpness, and would have shot away, but a hound flew forward before it could flee, and under the hounds of the horses they have him, worrying their quarry with woeful wailing. The lord hurtles from his horse and heaves the fox up, wrestles it from the reach of those ravenous mouths, holds it high overhead, and hurrahs manfully, while the bloodthirsty bloodhounds bay and howl, and the other huntsmen hurrying with their horns to catch sight of the slaughter and celebrate the kill. And then the company of clansmen has come together. The burglars blew one huge blast, and the others hallooed with open throats. A human could not hear a headier music than the rapturous roar which for Reynard's soul was raised. The dogs do their reward, are patted and stroked and praised. Then red fur rips. Reynard out of his pelt is praised. So they basically let the dogs rip the fox. Then, with night drawing near, they headed homewards, blaring their bugles with the fullness of their breath. And at last the lord lands at his lovely home, to find, by the heat of his fireside, his friend the good Sir Gawain in glad spirits, and on account of the company he's kept with the ladies. His blue robe flowed as far as the floor, his soft furred surcoat suited him well, and the hood which echoed it hung from his shoulders. Both hood and coat were edged in ermine. Ermine is a fur. He meets the master in the middle of the room, greets him graciously, with Gawain saying, "I shall first fulfill our formal arrangement, which we fixed in words when the drink flowed freely." So instead of the lord, this time the lord giving him the hunt first and then Gawain giving him the kisses, Gawain's going to give him what he got first. He clasps him tight and kissed him 3 times with as much emotion as a man could muster. "By the Almighty," said the master, "you must have had luck to profit such a prize, if the price was right." "Oh, fiddlesticks to the fee," said the other fellow, "as long as I have given the goods which I gained." Okay, but he didn't, did he? He hasn't said anything about the green belt. So he's like, okay, you ever telling a lie or a half lie, and so you like go in first to get it out of the way? That's what Gawain is doing here. "As long as by Mary," said the master, "mine's a miserable match. I've hunted for hours with nothing to my name but this foul stinking fox. Fling its fur to the devil. So poor in comparison to your priceless prizes. These prizes you impart, 3 kisses, perfect and true." "Enough," the knight entreats. "I thank you through and through." The standing lord then spoke about how the fox fur flew. And with meals and mirth and minstrelsy they made as much amusement as any mortal could, and among those merry men and laughing ladies Gawain and his host got giddy together. Only lunatics and drunkards could have looked more delirious. Every person present performed party pieces until the hour arrived when revelers must rest, and the company in that court heard the call of their beds. And lastly, in the hall, humbly to his host, our knight says good night, and renews his gratitude. "Your countless courtesies have kept me here this Christmas. Be honored by the High King's kindness. If it suits, I submit myself as your servant. But tomorrow morning I must make a move, for you will, as you promised, please appoint some person to guide me, God willing, towards the Green Chapel, where my destiny will dawn on New Year's Day." "On my honor," he replied, with hand on heart, "every promise I made shall be put into practice." He assigns him a servant to steer his course, to lead him through the land without losing time, to ride the fastest route between forest and fell. So he's assigned a servant to the next morning to get Gawain to the Green Chapel when he's supposed to be there. Gawain will warmly thank his host in terms that tell towards the women folk. The knight then waves farewell. It's with a heavy heart the guests in the hall are kissed and thanked for their care and kindness, and they respond with speeches of the same sort, commending him to our Savior with sorrowful sighs. Then politely he leaves the lord and his household, and to each person he passes he imparts his thanks for taking such trouble in their service and assistance and such attention to detail in the attendance of duty. So he's being kind and polite and grateful to the servants who took care of him while he was here in the castle. That shows good manners, doesn't it? That shows courtesy. So let's take a look at our chivalry here. Maybe living by honor and glory. Maybe avoiding meanness or unfairness. Okay, and definitely chivalry under romance. So he's being really polite, really, really kind. And every guest is grieved at the prospect of his going, as if honorable Gawain were one of their own. By tapering torchlight he was taken to his room and brought to his bed to be at his rest. But if our knight sleeps soundly, I couldn't say, for the matter in the morning might be muddying his thoughts. So let him lie and think in sight of what he sought. In time I'll tell if tricks work out the way they ought. And that is the end of Fitt 3. Okay, go ahead and pause. You can work on any notes, add any details that you want, and then you're going to go answer your discussion question in Schoology, and I will see you and upload your notes, and I will see you next week for the end of the story. Bye, everybody.